All right. Last time that we were talking about stuff, we were talking about the 5 themes of geography. And we had talked about how geography is the study of the earth and everything on it. And we talked about our 5 themes: place, region, human environment interaction, location, and movement. And that's what we had talked about yesterday about. Today, we're going to go in a little more detail about these 5 themes of geography. And remember, we're only writing down what I tell you to write down. So where do the 5 themes come from? Well, the 5 themes of geography, they start from the National Geographic Society. So the 5 themes of geography, the National Geographic Society is the one who came up with them. And they're kind of fulfill a need that geographers have, that people who study, and geographers are people who study the earth and everything on it. And this just helps them to categorize the things that they learn. And there's a mnemonic device for remembering the 5 themes of geography called PLIM. And PLIM is place, region, interaction, human environment interaction, location, and movement. Okay, so that's PLIM. So when we're talking about place in a little more detail, go ahead and make a bullet and write down the word place. So make a bullet and write down the word place, and I'm going to talk about some things while you're writing that down. So place, it's a description of what makes that place different to others. So if I was trying to tell you about the bedrooms in the house and I wanted to explain to you exactly which one I meant, I could say the one with the 2 beds and 1 window. If the other rooms had only 1 bed each or 2 windows, then you could easily tell which room I meant. Now, place is divided into 2 parts. There's physical differences and human differences. Physical differences are things like mountains, rivers, what type of soil there is, what type of animals in the area, and so forth. Okay. Human differences, on the other hand, are talking about things such as roads, buildings, and such. Okay. So there's physical differences when you're talking about place, and that's like the physical features around you. So yesterday I gave the example of being in a classroom and I described the classroom. But everything I described in that classroom were human differences because, well, I wasn't outside the time period. If you're in a building, you can't really describe the things that you see in the building unless you're seeing outside a window. While if you're outside, you can describe the physical things you see, such as there's grass, there's a river next to me, but also the human characteristics that you see. So I'm standing in a small field. There's a river running next to me. As I kind of look next to me, there's a tall tower. Okay. Those type of things that's a human and physical differences. Go ahead and make a number 1. For number 1, we're going to write down, it's a description of what makes that place different to others. So go ahead and write that down for number 1. It is a description of what makes that place different to others. So that's what a place is. So go ahead and write that down. And like always, if I'm moving too fast for you, just kind of pause the video and then you can write down what I told you to write down while it's paused. Okay. Next thing to talk about is region. Now, regions are areas. Oh, sorry. Make a bullet. Write down region. So make a bullet. Write down region. Regions are areas that can be grouped together by a set of things special to that region. We have countries ruled by governments, areas speaking the same language or having the same religion, and we have areas that serve by a particular service, such as school district. So regions are defined areas. So Columbus, Indiana has defined boundary lines. State of Indiana has defined boundary lines. Now, most of the time, regions have defined boundary areas. Sometimes, though, it's a general area. Like yesterday, I gave the example of the Northeast part of the United States. That would be like a loose definition of an area. You could also have like the north part of Indiana or south part of Indiana. Those don't have any particular defined boundary lines. But if I told you northern Indiana, you know where northern Indiana generally is. And if I said southern Indiana, you would know generally where southern Indiana would be at. If I said Eastern Indiana, you kind of have a good idea. If I had said Western Indiana, you have a general idea where it is. If I said Central Indiana, you have kind of a general idea where it is. So there's some places with specified boundary lines, being Columbus, Indiana, state of Indiana, United States of America, defined boundary lines. And then there's kind of loose definition of you kind of have a general idea of knowing where I'm talking about. Southern Indiana, for example, is like, okay, I kind of know where Southern Indiana would be at. Go ahead and make a 1 and write down. Regions are areas that can be grouped together by a set of things special to that region. So number 1, regions are areas that can be grouped together by a set of things special to that region. And as I said, you have those two different parts of region. You have your general regions, and then you have your specified regions. And they can be a couple different things. They don't just have to be like city boundary lines or state boundary lines. They can be language, like where certain languages are at. They can be where you have ethnic groups at. So it can be language, ethnic group, can be even where foods are most popular, what sports teams are most popular, in which areas. All of those can kind of be grouped together in different ways. So it can be defined boundary lines, but it can always kind of be more of a loose, just kind of general terms of other maps that you've kind of seen before. Okay, if you're still writing that, or you're still writing that down, just go ahead and pause and then finish writing it. I'm going to move on to the next one. Next one to talk about for today, make a bullet and write down human environmental interactions. So make a bullet and write down human environmental interactions. So human environmental interactions is about how people interact with the environment. So it answers a lot of important questions such as what effects have people had on the environment? How has the environment affected them? Do they depend on it for anything? What changes have they made to the environment to make it easier to live in? Okay. And you can divide human environment interaction into kind of several different parts, into 3 parts mainly. How people have been changed by environment, how the environment has been changed by people, and how people depend on their environment. Okay. So how people have changed the environment, that's simply, how we build houses, for example, how we then plow the land so that we can farm and so forth. Okay. So that's how people have changed the environment. How people have been changed by the environment is people have been changed by the environment by wearing, for example, it's cold outside, I put on a coat. All right, that's people changing to their environment. We then change the environment by then plowing down like a hill to flatten it out so that we can farm. And how the people depend on the environment is talking about kind of what grows in the area. Indiana, corn, soybeans, that's what we kind of grow in Indiana. So we depend on our environment, for food, water, and such. Okay. So when you talk about human environment interactions, talking about how you change yourself to meet the environment you live in, how you change the environment around you so that you can live there, and what things in the environment you need to survive. Okay. So that's human environment interaction. We're going to make a number 1 underneath human environment interaction. And for 1, we're going to write down relationship between the people and their environment or how they work together. So write it down for number 1. And once you have that written down, that's where we're going to start that today with our notes.